Yankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvamanusandathami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshinim Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapadakramo Panishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagha Dhyanavastita Tatgatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam na vidussura suragana Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha. So let us chant 5 verses of the 8th chapter, starting with verse number 18. So I'll repeat each line once, each half a line once. I'll repeat it so 2 times. Number 18. Avyaktadyvaktayas sarvaha prabhavantiyara aharagame. Avyaktadyvaktayas sarvaha prabhavanti aharagame. Ratriagame praliyante tatraiva vyakta sangyake. Ratriagame praliyante tatraiva vyakta samyake. Next. Bhutagramasya evayam bhutva praliyate. Bhutagramasya evayam bhutva praliyate. Ratriagame vashaf partha prabhavati aharagame. Ratriagame vashas partha prabhavati aharagame. Parastat smatu bhavonyo vyakto vyaktat sanatanaha. Parastat bhatu bhavonyah vyakto vyaktat sanatanaha. Yasarveshu bhuteshu sarveshu bhuteshu nachyatsu nacha vinashyati. Yahasa sarva bhuteshu nashyatsu na vinashyati. Avyaktoksharamityuktaha tamahu paramam gatim. Avyaktoksharamityuktaha tamahu paramam gatim. Yam prapya na nivartante tadhama paramam mama. Yam prapya na nivartante tadhama paramam mama. Then the last one, number 22. Purusha saparaf partha bhaktya labhyastvananyaya. Purusha saparaf partha bhaktya labhyastvananyaya. Yasyantasthani bhutani yena sarvamidam tatam. Yasyantasthani bhutani yena sarvamidam tatam. So what we had seen last time was the verse number 17, which said, Sahasra Yuga Paryantam Aharyat Brahmano Viduhu Ratrim Yuga Sahasranam Te Rohatra Vidojanaha. So what was pointed out is the what is being talked about here is the macro vision of this world. The macro vision. And what we see is a micro vision of the world in our lives. And the micro vision of the life is very similar to the macro vision. In fact, it's the other way around. The macro vision that we have to see is very similar to our own micro vision. This is what is being talked about. And what was said here is that please see, so the one thing to kind of get out of this whole discussion, very important to see this, is that the way our creation is, there is no real beginning or an end to it. So we choose those words carefully. There is no real beginning. There is an apparent beginning, but not a real one. So the micro vision is that in our life, we have beginning and an end. Our life seems like a straight line which had a beginning. And we certainly know that there is going to be an end. But what is being pointed out is that the macro vision, from a macro vision standpoint, see that there is no real beginning and a real end. So what then? What if there is no real beginning? There is a kind of like a seeming beginning and a seeming end, but there is no real beginning and a real end. How is that? So if you look at within a lifespan, we have multiple beginnings and multiple ends. So we have a beginning in a day begins and a day ends. So the phenomena of a day beginning and a day ending is an interesting one. And this should be understood even at the macro level. So this phenomena of a seeming beginning and a seeming end should be used as a what is called a upalakshana. Upalakshana means it should be seen as an example of what the macro is all about. So here Swami Paramarthananda had given a very interesting example. I thought very useful. He says, when astronauts go to the space and they escape the gravitational force of the earth, they are actually floating in the air. And as you know, you can see pictures that if they are eating a sandwich, the sandwich is also suspended in the air, separate from them, because there is no gravity that brings them down as it does on the ground level. You cannot have a suspended sandwich. It has to be sitting on a table somewhere. Everything just falls down. But in the outer space, everything is kind of suspended. People are also moving. You have to sort of push yourself and then you keep on moving, then you don't have the gravitational force. So this is what they all have to experience as they go. But then, in order to make sure that you're capable of negotiating this rather strange way of behaving, of having sandwiches. You cannot keep on expecting the sandwich to be in your hand. It'll be floating somewhere. And what happens? So, if in order for you to really experience that, what you need to do, what NASA does in the US, is to simulate it on the ground. Not quite sure how they do that, but they have to nullify the effect of the gravitational force, nullify in such a way that they simulate a space environment right on the ground. Because before you go to the space, you have to get used to it so that you can be adept at working there. So to make it adept, you simulate it. Now, the reason why this example is interesting is because the macro level way of leading the life. Supposing you have to say, how is the macro level leading a life? What happens? So there is no beginning and a no end of the macro level, at the macro level. Really? No beginning and now? I don't understand how that will be. Well, it is just like being simulated on you in your life also. So, Ishvara in his wisdom has given us a simulated experience to visualize what the macro level life will be. So what do you mean by that? Within a life here, we have this simulated apparent beginning and an apparent end. How is that? Because what happens is, and so really the final word is that there is no such thing as a beginning and an end. There is something called manifestation and unmanifestation. So you can say a relative beginning and a relative end is called manifestation and unmanifestation. It is not a real beginning and a real end. How? We now look at our life, it seems like a simulated way of the macro. Simulated means that there is no real beginning of a day. What happens is that a mechanism is provided to you where you interrupt your life. Really remarkable how this is, isn't it? Because you are, supposing you look at yourself during the day. There's a lot going on. You're getting prepared. You brush your teeth. You go to the bathroom, and then you are hungry. Then you have breakfast, and then you have some strength to do things. All those things are going on. And so it's a full day of activity, right? So this is what life seems to be all about, a full day of string of full days of activities. But in between, there seems to be a break. Very definitely for all of us. And the break takes up in two forms. One is complete suspension of all activities, complete ignorance of what is happening, complete disassociation with what is happening in deep sleep. So, because during the daytime you are very careful about food and your possessions and so on, And at night time, even if somebody comes in and quietly robs your computer and your iPhone, and you have no idea. You are completely disassociated with it. So this is one interruption. The second interruption is that you have an alternate life, an alternate life, and you have a completely nothing to do with this waking state, an alternate life of altogether. It's kind of like a break. But then, after that period is over, the night is over, you resume your full day of next day of activities. So in a way, you are in a hibernation for the night, and then you are rejoining this activity in the end. So in fact, this is the kind of beginning and end that characterizes your life. So the only thing that happens is that much I accept. We accept that if you analyze it the way we are doing now, you find that really everybody doesn't have a real beginning. There is a beginning of the day, an ending of a day. But you are not beginning, you are not ending, you are just stringing together many days and nights together. But it appears I have a real beginning in the beginning of my life and a real end of the life. Isn't that different? So it says no. It is simply a change of scenery. There is no real beginning. You just suspend your activities for a while until you are able to get a new body from someplace, and you now resume your activities in the next life. So therefore there is no real end. And what you thought to be a beginning on this side also is not a real beginning. You have a lot going on before that. We recently had our third grandchild born about 3 months ago, and as I hold her in my hands and just grasp her, I look at her and I says, my gosh, where was she in her last life? Who was she? I wonder about it. I mean, you can never tell. But you can tell a little bit because she has taken birth in a loving environment. Her parents are taking good care of her. Grandparents are also loving. We are doing okay. It's a good environment. And so she has done some things to deserve this. And she has taken birth in the Kapoor family. And so, yeah, there is a lot behind all of that. And so it is not a real beginning. It is a continuation. It's a manifestation, a little bit more uh, um, more of a change of manifestation. That's it. But it's just a small change. This is exactly what happens. So what it means is, to summarize, that the macro level also, there is no such thing as a real beginning. This is an important thing to see. Okay? So, in the entire creation, there is no real beginning. It always is. Isness is the byword. Isness. So in, I think, Kathopanishad, it says, Asti iti upalabhyate. Asti iti eva upalabhyate. So the isness and the knowledge of it always is. What is changes, but that it is does not change. Satta Spurti Pradhanena Ishvara. So Ishvara's very, Brahman's very nature is Asti Bhati Priyam. Satyam Jnanam Anantam. It is just, it is. And it is in the form of knowledge. And it is infinite. And so there is no beginning for it. It always is. The whole creation is always has been. This is called Anadi. That is really hard to understand. Really? There is no beginning? So what was in the beginning? It always was there. So it did not pop up from nothing. The popping up of something new, like for example, when the baby was born in our daughter-in-law's tummy, in her garbha. So there's something was born, but it was really something which was already there in the whole creation. And the Sukshma Sharira now took a Sthula Sharira as the basis and then started to grow. And so all of us also one day, our Sthula Sharira will go, but the Sukshma Sharira will continue until we find that we really are nothing but the self alone, in which case even the Sukshma Sharira disappears and you become the entire creation, the very basis of the whole creation, Ishvara. You always have been that way, but you just didn't realize it, so you think you are separate. So as a result, you are still continuing with the with the taking up new bodies, new lives, and so on. This is what happens. So this is an important thing to see, that really speaking, the entire creation in the form of the body of the Ishvara, the Upadana Karanam, and the very nature of Ishvara has always been there. You and I had never been, we were never really born. We were always there. And there are infinite jivas. And so when you say, for example, that, how come the population is increasing? So it is not just one human jivas, but it is an infinite variety of jivas, different animals, trees, insects, infinite, and always been there. All that happens is that each individual manifestation either is apparently isolated or really merges into the reality. Exactly like we have given the example of that, it's like an infinite ocean, and there are infinite waves, and each wave has a apparent isolation. That's possible. You you're confused and you feel that I am separate from everything else. And you keep on separating from others as long as you do not understand the very nature of it. Once you understand the very basis of it, then the apparent isolation also goes. You were never isolated to begin with, but you thought you were, you and I. And as soon as our apparent isolation goes, we were already the very basis of the whole creation. So therefore, to summarize, what Lord Krishna is pointing out is that listen, even at the macro level, there is only manifestation and a non-manifestation. And yet at the macro level, the scales are different. How are the scales different? Because in the in our human life, we have some expected manifestation of life, 100 years, generally, 100 years or less. Very few exceptions over that it's meant to be 100 years. And so we have 100 years. Each year has 365 days. Each day has, 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of nighttime, more or less, depending on the. And so this is how it is segmented. And there is one other difference between macro and micro. In the micro, one person can have a day while another person has a night. So right now, it is 11 o'clock at night in India. So that's night. And here in the US in California, right now it is 10:25. So there is both coexistence of a night and a day. So this is what is called the day of a human being. But at the macro level, there is a day of the entire creation and a night of the entire creation. Not dissolution, no real beginning and a real end, but a relative beginning, just like the micro level. And what that means is that at the macro level, everyone goes to sleep, dissolves as though, just like we do at night time. It's an exact simulation. And then after the macro night is over, everyone wakes up. Is there a new beginning? No, because it is based on what they were before they went to sleep, just like our lives also. It is just a manifestation and a creation. The scales are different. So now we can go back to the verses of the Gita. Here it says, Sahasra Yuga Pariyantam in number 17, as we did last week. Sahasra Yuga Pariyantam, he says that the Brahmaji means the firstborn, and the keeper of the macro level. The macro level keeper will have 1,000 yugas. Until then, 100 years. So 100 years is one day, and then you multiply it by 1,000 times, and that becomes the life of Brahmaji. And in fact, I was doing some calculation. So we went through this last time. So Chatur Yuga means, the 4 different yugas. Right now we are in Kali Yuga. So the 4 yugas were 4,320,000 human years. Right? And so 4,320,000, these are the 4 yugas. And so 1,000 times that is the one day. And so 2,000 times that is both the day and the night, a complete cycle. And then you multiply it by, this is a day. 2,000 yugas is one day. You multiply it by 365 times, that becomes 1 year. And the lifespan of Brahmaji is 100 years. So you multiply that number by 100 years. And so the life of Brahmaji is 3.1536 e to the raised 14 level. You cannot even measure we'll have to say trillion, trillion, trillion or something like that. I didn't do it. This is how long the life of a Brahmaji is. So life of a Brahmaji means what? That means that after that, a new person is appointed. So Brahmaji is also a jiva. Brahmaji is also a jiva, just like you and I, at a macro level. And at that level, after these trillions of years, he also has to give up his position. Because you and I have a position, we have a certain personality, a certain beingness that people can recognize. I'm a member of the family, I'm teacher, you are also a member of some family, you are a student. Like that, we have a certain personality. So Brahmaji also has a personality. He has to manage the whole creation. But that position is also given up after his life. And a new person takes up. So this is at the macro level. Okay? So this is what it is said in verse number 17 that we did last time. Sahasra yuga paryantam aharyat brahmano viduhu ratrim yuga sastranam te ahoratra vido janaha. And then number 18, now we can start a new verse. Avyaktad vyaktayah sarvaha prabhavanti aharagame ratriagame praliyante tatta eva avyakta samgike. So he says that in number 18, we've already talked about it. There is nothing much to explain. We've already explained that on the arrival of the day of Brahma, all manifested beings emerge from the unmanifest. And the arrival of the night of Brahma, they merge back into itself called unmanifest. So there is no destruction of the world, not possible. Because it is a destruction of a night, you can say. When the day comes, there is a destruction of the night. And there is a destruction of the day when night comes. So there is this relative manifestation, but that's all that happens even at the macro level. There's no difference between the micro level and the macro level. And so then in number 19, he says, Bhutagramah sa eva ayam bhutva bhutva praliyate ratri agame avashaha partha prabhavati aharagame. So he says, so here this is just pointing out that even at the macro level of the Brahmaji, it is exactly the same thing happens. You go from the one manifestation to unmanifestation, back to manifestation, and there is nothing you can do about it. The whole macro system works immaculately, and it is just goes, swings the pendulum one way or the other. That's all that happens. It has no beginning, no real ending. It is all the same pretty much one way or the other. Okay. So then we can say what it means is, so this repetition of bhutva bhutva praliyate means the cyclical nature. So there is no real beginning. In fact, it is said that the way to visualize our lives and our nature and so on, that we have talked about this before, this is the fundamental building block of the whole creation made by Ishvara. What is the fundamental building block? Nothing is really a straight line. It is all in terms of a circle, cyclical nature of the circle. And so there is an appearance of straight lines and straight tables and so on. Appearances are one thing. It is the beauty of this whole creation is that how in the form of circles you have an appearance of a non-circle. Like for example, suppose you take a flat table or surface. It looks pretty flat to me. I don't see any circles in here. Yes, it's true. It looks flat. But if you really analyze it, you find that there are molecules that are circular. In fact, if you were to look at the physics of the solid surface, there are infinite number of molecules that are continuously rotating. If you were to take an instrument to really look at it, deeper and deeper into it with more power of the lens power, you will actually see that the whole table is nothing but, and the same thing is true for our bodies. If you were to really look at, in fact, it's interesting that Ishvara has made a skin so that it kind of looks like a solid thing and it looks nice, and it's a great creation, this whole skin. And in fact, it's interesting, if we ever look at our own skin with a very powerful microscope, you'll be so shocked. There'll be, first of all, bugs crawling all over it. You say, what? That's not me, it's you. Furthermore, that you will see nothing but even bones. Bone is also nothing but circles alone, all rotating molecules, atoms and so on. That's what the fundamental aspect is. So there is no such thing as a straight line. Everything is molecular, everything is circular. Same thing is true for our creation of the sun and the moon and the gravitational forces. Same thing is true for the time. Same thing is true for the space. There's no flatness to it. It is all circular in motion. So that is what is indicated by the word bhutva bhutva. Bhutagramah sa eva ayam bhutva bhutva praliyate. It says circularly goes back and forth. So the only thing that happens is that this circularity of the whole creation creates an apparentness of it which needs to be understood. So, even though the whole creation seems to be moving and circular, this only applies to anatma. It is just totally opposite to that for the atma. So only the non-self is moving circularly. The self, the atma, in fact, is never changing, never moving, not capable of moving. It even cannot move even if it wants to, because it is unchanging and infinite and always there. This is a remarkable thing. If you look at the nature of ourselves, the nature of ourselves seems to be mixed up with the non-self. How mixed up with the non-self? It appears to be troubled. It appears to be under the influence of time. I am young, I am old, I am sick, I am well, I am disappointed. So in all cases, the self seems to be mixed up with the non-self. And the non-self is circularly moving. This is the nature of Jagat. The word Jagat, as you know, in Sanskritam, the words accurately describe what the phenomena is. So Jagat means the world, means all your experiences, is composed of, from an etymological standpoint, Jagat means Jayate Gacchati iti. It seems to be born, and as soon as it is born, it's dead. So this is the nature of change, the nature of anatma, the nature of circularity, the nature of apparentness, is that it appears to be moving, and you cannot get hold of it. You cannot freeze the time. You can only do it, you can pretend to do it. It's just continuously moving. And the self is associated with it. This is the problem. So the self is just the opposite of the Jagat. Because it is not moving at all. It cannot move. It's like the water cannot move. The water can move, of course, it's not a perfect example. But the waves can move. There can be waviness. But the waviness comes up and then goes back again, and the water remains always the same. So the self, for example, is just the opposite. It is never born. At least in the case of the Jagat, the experiences, it is not really born. It is apparently born, as we were discussing earlier. and not really ending, only apparently ending, but at least there is some apparent movement, apparent birth, an apparent death. Even that doesn't apply to the Atma. There is no apparent, no real, no nothing. It is always there. Always there is the very basis of the whole creation. A remarkable thing, if you really just look at ourselves, we are mixed up with our experiences, but we are never really affected by our experience. We always remain the same. I find this kind of thinking and meditation is very useful. Very useful. I sometimes do this meditation for myself, and I see that I was someone before I took birth in this life. Who am I? Who was I? And I will be someone even after this life is over. Who is that? And so, really speaking, this is just it's like a drama, it's like a play. That you get born into a family and then you have relationships. You have a mother and a father, and you have siblings, and then you have children and friends. And so all this happens, and in the meantime your bodies are deteriorating, getting older, and then this drama ends. But you remain the same. Then you pick up some new threads, some new drama. I find that this kind of a meditation is very useful. You sometimes say, who am I? Is someone I am there? I'm there. Who was there before I take birth in this life? And this life would be over. Who will I be? You have your own identity separate from it. And the real answer to that is, all of us are always the same, which is Paramatma, the Self. But in the meantime, my search enables me to take up new lives. This is exactly what I'm just giving you an overall picture, but that's exactly what these verses are saying. We look at number 20. Just a second. Let me look at the word meaning of each. Yeah. Paraha tasmat tu bhavaha anyaha avyakto avyaktat sanatanaha yasa sarveshu bhuteshu nashyatsu na vinashyati. So he says that please see that in this entire play, the drama, there is someone which does not get destroyed in this drama of Vyakta and Avyakta. manifestation and non-manifestation. There is something that remains the same. Paraha tasmat tu bhavaha anyaha. He says there is bhavaha means that a nature of something, some definition. That bhavaha is paraha. Anyaha and bhavaha paraha means that there is something you should see that never really changes. So there the example of the various segmentation of space is a very good one. And so you can say that, for example, in a house, there are so many different rooms. There is a small room. Sometimes that room has to be cut down made into a bigger room. People will say that, we have 4 bedrooms. We don't need 4 bedrooms. We can just dissolve one of the walls and make it into 3 bigger rooms. Sure, all of that happens. So the small bedroom gets destroyed, 4 bedrooms get destroyed, get merged into 3 bedrooms. All of that is happening. But in and through all of that, the space itself does not get destroyed. It has nothing to do with it. This is exactly our situation. So in the drama that we have in this life, I was someone which was already there. And yet now I am apparently segmented with respect to my relationships and so on. And when those things are gone, I will always remain the same. Nothing will change for me. This is what he's saying. Paraha tasmat tu bhava anyaha avyaktaha avyaktat sanatanaha. He says let us look at the English translation of it. He says, however, beyond that unmanifested, there is another unmanifested being which is eternal. It does not perish when all beings perish. So this is an interesting thing to see. So he's talking about a relative unmanifestation and an absolute unmanifestation. See the logic of this. So when you and I go to sleep, we become relatively unmanifest. So, for example, you have, a dancer, a very proficient dancer who performs in a play, and she or he is moving very nicely and has a dance routine that people can see. This is manifested. Now suppose that person goes to sleep. And this is a person who has learned dancing and is a very accomplished classical dancer. In other words, not just moving without any rhythm or anything, but with Bharatnatyam or some kind of a dance, ballerina. So accomplished dancer, but that accomplished dancer is unmanifest. Supposing that dancer is sleeping, you can never tell what the accomplishment is for that person by looking at that person sleeping. You cannot tell. Only when that person wakes up and invokes the power of the dance, then the manifestation comes. So, with respect to the manifested dance, a sleeping person is relatively unmanifest, isn't it? Relatively unmanifest. But the relative unmanifestation is capable of becoming manifest. So, this is one kind of manifestation. Avyakta. It's called avyakta. Vyakta means manifestation, and avyakta means non manifestation. Now, different from the relative non manifestation is a real avyakta. Real avyakta means one which is not relatively unmanifested but really unmanifest. Really unmanifest means what? It means it is there but not manifest as something different from you. See, if you look at it from a single human being standpoint, the relative unmanifest means that I am right now not capable of dancing. I am sleeping. So my powers have become dormant. But they can be manifest. But I, as a Paraha, as the Paramatma, as the very self, cannot become manifest like the first type of manifest is. So this is a second level of unmanifest. In the Dakshinamurti Stotram, in the very first verse, he says, and this is something that that really is a very important thing to see, that I am evaluating myself as a person when I am manifest. So I evaluate myself and make a judgment about myself when I act out. You can say that, for example, I am not very good at talking to people. Why do you say that? Because something happens to me, and when people are there, I kind of become shy and I clam up. Yeah, people can say that, which is true. It's very possible that you may have a behavior where you feel that I'm not an extrovert, I'm more of an introvert. So I cannot really, so you can evaluate yourself by your manifestation. And the issue is that we evaluate ourselves only from my manifestation. This is important to see. I only evaluate myself when I am visible to me and to others. Others may feel that, yes, this person is very shy, and why don't you open up a little bit? I also feel I'm very shy and I don't open up to others and so on. So I have an evaluation of myself as being unfriendly, let's say, just exaggerating. So this is exactly how this is the first level of unmanifestation, which is capable of manifesting but it doesn't do a good job of it. But the second level of unmanifestation is it will never be manifest. It is not capable of manifesting, and it is not necessary to manifest. It is complete by itself. So you should never evaluate yourself by your level of manifestation. Why? Because it is fundamentally it is in fact the very basis of manifestation. This is the kind of analysis that we have to really understand. So in Dakshinamurti Stotram, the first one is called Pratyakatma. So our acharyas, Swami Dayananji also, and so on, we spent a lot of time discussing this and doing meditation on it. The self is something that doesn't happen. So I'm just giving you different words to explain the same thing. It does not happen. Only the non-self happens. Happens means that it has an apparent beginning and an apparent end. The self never ends, never has a beginning, so it doesn't happen. It is the very basis of the happening. And so therefore, this is what is called inherently unmanifest. So anytime you are self-critical about yourself, and for others also, you are barking up the wrong tree. You can criticize your own personality if you like, but you cannot criticize your own person. Because the own person never, one's own person, not the personality, never manifested itself to begin with. And your mind can only grapple with things that it is manifest. So this is what is being talked about. So now we can see the verse number 20. Paraha tasmat tu bhavaha anyaha. And means that this parabhavaha is something different. Different how? Avyaktaha avyaktat sanatanaha. It is always avyaktaha. Yasa sarveshu bhuteshu nashyatsu na vinashyati. That never gets destroyed when everything else is destroyed or destroyable. In fact, that is the meaning of the word paraha. The word paraha means one that outlasts. So even after all the room spaces are changed, the space remains the same. Paraha, parasmat, tasmat paraha. So this is the very nature of the human being. So what it means is that, really speaking, you have changes in your life, but underlying the changes, you should see that you are an unchanging person. Even though the self seems to be mixed up with the non-self, not really. It cannot get mixed up. The only thing that can get mixed up is the one that is visible to you, which happens. And you cannot happen. So any criticism of yourself is unwarranted. You have no basis of being critical about yourself. You cannot evaluate it. You're not visible to yourself or to anybody else. No one else should criticize you. They can only criticize your personality, but not the person. So we'll stop here. But the central theme here is that even at a macro level, there is no real beginning and a real end. Ishvara and the Jagat, as both the material and the intelligence cause, has always been there. And each one of us also has been there. We never had a beginning. We've always been there in one form or the other. But the only thing is that our nature as an individual will come to an end. And we will now see that the individuality is nothing but an apparent nature. The real nature is nothing changes. I am always the same, always will be. Happy, fulfilled, Satyam Jnanam Anantam. So even though that this chapter, so now we will do an ending of this chapter is going to be ending soon, and in fact I need to send you information about Kaivalya Upanishad, which I will do in the next couple of days. So when we begin that book, but in the meantime, what this chapter is talking about is, which we will do next time, is this is a basis of Krama Mukti. If one does not get the immediate freedom, then how the next life should be seen as the step in the right direction. It's called Krama Mukti as opposed to Sadhya Mukti. So that Krama Mukti also has some reasons why you can most efficiently go in the right direction. Not efficiently, you can go in the right direction, or you can fall down in wrong paths. Don't do that, because see that the macro picture is also there, and follow that macro picture if you are not able to see that you are the Paraha in this life. So the 8th chapter is a very peculiar one in the Bhagavad Gita, as we have said before, that it is in fact a introduction to Krama Mukti. The rest of the Bhagavad Gita is for Sadhya Mukti, but the 8th chapter is for sequential Mukti, moksha, which is step by step. Step by step means you're not able to finish it in this life. Now you have to choose a path for going to the next life, and how best to choose that path. What to do is the advice given by Sri Krishna. So we are coming to an end. We'll just be taking a few more verses, and then the 8th chapter will be over. So with that, I close today's class with a prayer and see if you have any questions. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Very nice to see all of you. So many of you, this is your second class. I still don't, it must be tiring for you to attend both classes, but very happy to see you both. Happy to see you in both the classes. Anyway, a lot of other people as well. So Keshav, so Brahmaji is in the midst, he's 50 years old. 50 is, so 100 year is the 1000 is of course a multiple, but there is considered to be 100 years, 100 macro years, and Brahmaji is at about 50. I think we are just entering the 51st year of his life. That's what, in fact, whenever some sankalpa is done, then that fact is recognized by the pujaris that it is the 51st year of the life of Brahmaji. Yeah. Okay, I don't really see any other questions per se. I'll stay for a while. So, just to give you a preview of the Kaivalya Upanishad, I should be getting, I think many of you already have it. So, a couple of things. One is that we will start a new roster because right now the roster is a holdover from Drikdrishya Viveka. But I think it'll be good to start a beginning because I'm not sure how many of you are listening, how many of you are not. So we will have a new roster, and I will send you the information about how to get the book. I should be getting all the books in the next few days, and I will mail them out to those of you that want a copy of it. And it'll be some nominal sum. I don't know how much will it be. So I'm waiting to hear back from the ashram. So we will do that. Another thing is that, as I mentioned in the first class, I got all the survey results back, and based on that, I think you're happy to have these online classes. So we will keep on the online classes, and we will augment it with some Zoom sessions. But at this point, I think it is too soon to go back to a real live class. I think we'll have to see how it goes. So I think both the negative and the positive of it. The negative being that it is still a little bit risky to have a close-in class. And the positive is that you seem to be okay with these online classes, especially those of you that are not here. So we'll continue with that. And the Kaivalya Upanishad will also be online primarily. And I will send you information in detail about the book and the ordering of it and so on. Okay, any other questions that came up? Nope. All right, great to have you all. Oh yeah, so no class next weekend because of the 4th of July holiday. I think many of the people had said that because this is the first time when people are able to travel freely, I think that many of the people will not be here. So I decided not to have any classes on the 4th of July. So we will meet 2 weeks from today. And I'll send you all an email on this. Okay?